believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Ricardo Rendes, also known as Ricky Brands, and a great episode for you today. Today we have Mark from CensorGuard and Anti-Cen.com, which is Anti-Censorship Tech Committee, ACTC, and also Matt Raymer from Content Safe. And Matt from Content Safe has been on a bunch. He's also been on my other roundtable show called The Union of the Unwanted, which is now also on Rumble. So definitely subscribe to our channel on Rumble and check out that show if you like roundtable discussion shows. But Matt and Mark come on to talk about big tech, censorship, AI, and many other related topics. So it's a fun discussion. It's a relevant discussion. And if you get some value out of these discussions, please consider giving some value back. Of course, I'll remind you, this is a value for value show. If this show helps you get through your workday, if this show helps you with your commuting, if this show helps with whatever mindless tasks you might be doing that listening to the Ripple Effect podcast helps you get through, please consider supporting the show. And if you can go in the show description and find all those ways of doing so. We have sponsors like Content Safe. Content Safe is how I get all my videos on all the video platforms I'm on, and I'm on a bunch of them like BitChute, Rockfin, Rumble, Band.video, Minds, and many more. And with Content Safe, I only have to upload to one video channel. Then magically, very quickly, that show, that thumbnail, that description, links, all that stuff shows up on all my video channels. So he saves me tons of uploading time. I only have to upload my videos once, and then it syncs to all my channels. So if you're a streamer, YouTuber, podcaster, if that sounds like a service that you're interested in, please check out Content Safe. Let him know you're a listener of the Ripple Effect podcast, and he'll definitely take care of you. And of course, there's plenty of other ways to support the show. If you want to send a one-time donation, if you want to support us monthly on Patreon, if you want to get some merch, get some Ripple Effect podcast tank tops, hoodies, t-shirts, kids clothes, hats, and much more, go to the Ripple Effect podcast merch.com. That brings you directly there. But all these links are also in the show description and on my website, the Ripple Podcast.com. So that's it, guys. Enjoy the conversation, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace. Well, actually, I guess we could start off with, letting the listeners know who you guys are. If Matt's been on the show a bunch, but always have new listeners, so why not give them a little reminder of what you do and who you are, and then we'll go to Mark, and then maybe you can tell us your origin story and how you guys met, and then your upcoming projects.
Yeah, well, I'll start. I've been in the IT industry since the 80s. I won't go into my whole life story, but just a thumbnail. I triple majored in computer science, math, and physics, went off to physics graduate school, decided I didn't want to be a physicist, went into computer science, met my wife while I was traveling in Southeast Asia, decided to stay here, have raised a family, been here for 30 years, and somewhere around 2010, 2012, started thinking about the problem of censorship and developing tools to help distribute content for people. And that became Content Safe, which we now are actually a growing little company. We're starting to hire some contractors now. Thank you, James Corbett. That helped me get some people that are quite good. Very happy. I've got one guy in Idaho and one guy in Tennessee that are helping us out.
Yeah, I'm not very good at many things, but I am pretty good at networking. I've made a lot of friends in podcasting, so I'm glad I've gotten to kind of push some of those relationships your way and connect you.
Yeah, you are the king. You are the king.
Well,
Definitely.
It's like a little secret that's not really a secret. If you're nice to everybody, you make friends. It's weird. It's just, oh, everybody that I've run into, and I've always been polite, even if I disagree, agree. Always been super nice to everybody. And honestly, it's just one of those things where it's also fun to connect cool people. So it's like, hey, I have this friend that might be interested in something you're doing, vice versa. So it's to me, it's a small task and it's a small thing that I can contribute to the community. And it's been awesome. It's been awesome to be able to, see people. I remember when I saw James Corbett on all the platforms. I'm like, this. I'm assuming Matt and Corbett have started working together. Because I remember giving you some contact info, and then all of a sudden he's on Rockfin, he's on Rumble, he's on all these platforms, and it's amazing because I talk about your what you do in your services all the time, but I still get guests on the show that are like, oh, if we only had some way of getting our videos on all the platforms, and I'm just like, do you not listen to my intros? Probably not, because I don't listen to anybody else's intros. So I'm like, I'm constantly recommending, like, hey, Content Safe, this is what they do. If you're a content creator, hit them up. And it just, I mean, you can't even quantify, and put into words what all the time saving that you do, because audio is easy, right? I mean, most people have one hosting place. They upload there, and then it shares it to all the other platforms. You have a RSS feed, but with video, it's really difficult because, as because you have to deal with it on a daily basis. Like, every platform's slightly different. The formats, all these type of things. So it can be very time consuming. So it's amazing how well your service works. And just, I guess, I can use this as my opportunity to plug in your service, because if you're a YouTuber, podcaster, streamer of any sort, gamer, and you want to just put your content on all the platforms, Content Safe is the one that you want to go with. Check them out. It'll save you tons of time. And like I said, I can't even put into words how many hours more of my life I get to spend doing other things because you're uploading my videos for me. So it's definitely cannot thank you enough for all that. So now, Mark, a little bit of
All
your.
right.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm actually within a few months of the same age as Matt. But I instead of 30 years in IT, it's 30 years in aerospace, really. Um, it's started off with time in the Air Force. Got a bachelor's in aerospace engineering, CU Boulder. Later on, I wound up going to the Air Force Institute of Technology and knocking out a master's in astronautical engineering with an emphasis in propulsion and controls. And well, if you combine those things, you'll read that correctly. That's basically rocket science. But and I've been working in the aerospace and defense industry for my entire career. Most of the work has been managing engineering efforts. Now, again, the aerospace efforts, usually I did work for MITRE for a while. So I did work communications for a while. But things have kind of gone round and round. I've been trying to really try to break free a little bit more from the industrial complex, and I've managed to so far. Right now, I've got a day job. I'm working for a small engine tooling company out of Mason, Ohio. They do turbine engine tooling, and I'm I'm an engineering manager for their electronic products. And where I'm trying to go now is I took a couple of cracks over the last couple of years at being a content creator myself. And along the way, I wound up meeting up with Matt. I was listening to Freedom's Phoenix, Ernest Hancock's show, and he was talking with Matt, and he kept referencing and mentioning Content Safe. So I thought, you know what? I think it would be a really good idea, because then I could get my stuff onto multiple platforms all at once. And I reached out, and at the time Matt was offering a deal. I took it and used the service and thought it was tremendous. But then I reached a point where, even though I tried content creation, a couple of topics, the first one was, I've got a hobby where I play with turbo diesel engines in cars and stuff. And one of the things I realized is that the world doesn't need more content creators talking about their darn cars. There's a whole lot of that out there. I mean, I enjoy it, and I'll probably still put updates on that channel once in a while, but I switched over to something I was calling Paracontrarian, which was about looking at censorship resistant tech. Now, I'd been talking with Matt. Matt had introduced me to Thomas Friedman, who's the guy who created the Pirate Box, Pirate Stick, and is now somebody who worked with Matt on something called Sensor Guard that we'll talk about in a little while. But I realized that rather than being a content creator, I realized that I think I probably have a better mission in life, which is to, instead of just being a content creator, how about I try to find a way to support the content creators out there and try to make the tools that Matt and Thomas are developing into fully realizing their potential and really making the world a better place, because we're going to make censorship damn near impossible. So working with Matt and Thomas and a couple others, we've started something we're calling the Anti-Censorship Technical Committee. That's ACTC. Website, if you want it, is anti-cen.com, which is anti-cen is in censorship. And what we're doing is, I'll read off the mission statement, if you don't mind. The mission statement is Anti-Censorship Technical Committee champions freedom by curating, supporting, and financing projects centered around privacy, decentralization, and anti-censorship technologies, fostering a world unrestrained by digital suppression. So another way to look at it is what we're doing is we're building a sort of an incubator for decentralized technology. And right now, the two projects are the ones, or it's really one project, is the combination of what Matt's doing with Content Safe and Sensor Guard. And anyhow, there's a little bit of my origin story and where we're coming from, what we're doing here today, really. Just hoping to network with content creators such as yourself and start looking for interest in these technologies and try to see if we can pursue making these technologies better, more usable, and more widely used.
Now, I know this is a little off topic, but I'm just curious because of your background. Have you looked into like zero point energy or, are you a big Tesla guy or, are you into that type of stuff?
I'm not a huge Tesla guy, but I've actually got a really good friend who has some theories on zero point energy. It was a previous effort of mine was I co-founded a rocket engine company called Frontier Astronautics. It's still operating out of my friend's missile silo in Wyoming. And my friend there actually has some really good theories that would be fun to try out someday to basically get massless. When you do propulsion to go one way, you throw something the other way. Well, with zero point energy field, I believe you could probably actually pull yourself through space and not use any reaction mass, which means your delta V, as long as you can find energy, your delta V could be infinite. So that's maybe kind of a crazy topic, but the thing is that I think there's truth to it. And there's a great book by, what was his name? Is a gentleman named Cook wrote a great book called The Hunt for Zero Point. Highly recommend it. Great read.
And don't you think that that's relevant actually to what we're talking about?
It is, because people need to be able to share their ideas. They need to not be shut down when they bring up something that's out of the ordinary. Something that sounds crazy to people shouldn't get them shut up, because we don't know what crazy theories might actually be real. And the past few years, we've had a lot of that proven to us, haven't we?
Indeed.
Yeah,
In spades.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, years ago, I had one of the automotive engineers on my show from the documentary Pump. It's a very good documentary about the history of, alternative energy in regards to cars, how the electric car was. It's funny how like things change in time, because electric car for a long time was suppressed. And then now it's being force fed to us, so it's like it's done a complete 360. But you also spoke about diesel engines. Diesel engines weren't designed to run off diesel fuel. With like very few modifications, you can get it to run off, vegetable oil and peanut oil and whatnot. And it's all about, plant obsolescence and controlling the energy. And you see a lot of that. The light bulb conspiracy, the idea that the light bulbs kept lasting longer and longer and longer, and then eventually all the big companies got together and like, hey, we need to limit the life of a light bulb. And there is a good documentary called Plant Obsolescence. I believe it's called Plant Obsolescence, the light bulb conspiracy, that goes into this topic and others. But Pump is a great one about the automotive industry. Who Killed the Electric Car was a good one. Gasland was another one. And then there's also I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Y Files on YouTube. It's a decent
I
channel.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and let me see if I can pop it up. So they did a good video right here called Killer Patents, Secret Science, Free Energy, Anti-Gravity Cover-Ups. And he actually, weirdly enough, the guy AJ who hosts the show, because I'm always, I like to do research on people and find out more. Like he was on the Rogan podcast years ago because he started, I think it's called Speedweed. It was like a company. It was like back like when Rogan first started his podcast. He was on to promote his weed company, which delivering weed in California or something like that. It was something along those lines. And then all of a sudden, I run into this YouTube channel, and I'm like, why this guy kind of looks familiar? I don't know who he is, but he has some really interesting stuff. Like as you can tell, like Tesla knew the secret's great pyramids, unlimited energy to power. Like so, a bunch of really interesting topics and whatnot. And now he does this. And but in that video. It's a really good one. It goes through all the stories of people who figured out all these methods of 0 point energy or alternative energy for cars. Like the guy, I forget what his name was, the one who figured out how you could just put water. It basically was a fuel cell engine. Put water in this like vehicle, and it would just, you could use tap water, you could use any type of water you want, throw it in there, and it would run. And eventually he killed himself, committed suicide or something like that. And just like,
Suicided.
yes, like Corbett says. And so it's like story after story after story of every time there's somebody who figures out a way of, basically taking some money away from the big corporate industries, then something mysterious happens. And similar with the car industry, that and Gas Hole in that documentary, Pump, and in that video I just showed you from the Y Files, all document quite a few people who figured out a way to get like 200 miles per gallon on like some carbureted engine, some small modification that led to that, and then their technology was suppressed or bought and hidden. So speaking of censorship, like throughout history, not just content, but like information technology have been censored and controlled. So now you see it with content, it's no different. It's always about the elite trying to control stuff. In regards to censorship, is there any content that you like watch or listen to or enjoy that was censored that you feel like maybe motivated you a little bit? Because I know a lot of us, like I know Matt, for example, like he listened to and watched and was a fan of a lot of the shows that were being censored, and I'm sure that was a motivator to like, hey, help these content creators out. Did you have a similar story?
I don't have a whole lot. I will say that over the past 4 years, during the whole COVID thing, we've seen a lot of people get canceled and censored, and I found that really despicable. And that is a part of what drove me in this direction, because I realized that these technologies kept popping up. I kept running across these technologies and going, wow, that would make somebody impossible to delete, impossible to censor. And why isn't somebody talking about this? There are all kinds of people talking about adjacent technologies like privacy and that sort of thing, but I wasn't seeing anybody really talking about what technologies are there that could be used. And just because I keep seeing these things pop up, I thought we need to start looking at those and seeing what we can do with them. So that is a part of it. And some of the things I have seen censored have been, a bunch of channels got taken off YouTube. Corbett got kicked off YouTube, right? Tom Woods got kicked off YouTube. Um,
I got kicked
uh,
off YouTube. I got kicked off YouTube. And the
that's
only,
how you know.
yeah, well, and the only reason I wasn't stressed about it was because I honestly was working with Matt, so I knew that like, hey, if I get kicked off YouTube, the show's being uploaded to all these other platforms, so I know that it's safe and people can reach it if it's not on YouTube. What I didn't know when I got kicked off YouTube, I had a hunch, but I didn't realize how drastic they were with their censorship. Was when I got kicked off YouTube, they also started censoring me on Google because it's the same company. So, for example, Google does a really good job of when my awful spelling comes into play and I'm trying to find something to figure out what I'm spelling, right? And they're like really good at like, okay, do you mean this? These are suggestions to what you might be looking for. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I meant. I spelled that completely wrong. But with my podcast, people would talk about like, hey, did you do a show on the NSA spying? Like, yeah, I got an episode I did with Thomas Drake. Let me send it to you. I'll go on Google on my phone. I'll be like, okay, the Ripple Effect podcast. I put the exact number, the exact guest, and it wouldn't come up. And I'm like, how can that be? It literally will find things I'm looking for even when I spell it wrong. And yet I'm putting all the exact information and it wasn't coming up anymore. And this happened right after I got kicked off YouTube. Same thing with COVID, right? So it's like, hey, do you know anything about this? Yeah, I had Brooke Jackson on, the Pfizer whistleblower. Let me, who was part of the COVID vaccine studies. Let me send it to you. Go on Google, can't find it. Oh yeah, I had Dr. Peter McCullough on. Let me send, can't find it. And it would happen over, and I'm like, how can this be? And then, I started doing some research and finding out that like it was a common theme. Like when you got censored off YouTube, it wasn't just YouTube. It wasn't just that platform. It's almost like the whole internet has now blackballed you, because Google controls the search engines and literally that becomes like one of the biggest issues is the fact that the two biggest search engines are Google and YouTube, and those are two ones censoring you. So it almost becomes impossible to find your stuff. And I know people have issues with like Peter Thiel and Rumble and some of these other platforms, but as long as I can use them, I'll use them. I mean, I'm on Band Video. I know initially there's some people who are like, oh, you're on Alex Jones's, platform. I'm like, the way I look at it is whatever issues you have with any platform, if it's Band Video, if it's Twitter, if it's whatever, like until I directly have an issue with it or they censor me, I'm gonna use them. If they're available, I'm gonna, and honestly, if YouTube didn't kick me off, I'd still use YouTube. I would use it because there are always going to be people that that are on those platforms or exclusively on those platforms that you need to reach. So any tool I can use to try to reach people, I'll use. But yeah, so where was I going with this? I'm sure I had a question in there somewhere. What were we just talking about before that long rant? I can't remember.
You were asking his origin story.
Oh yeah. What was it that I saw that got censored? Maybe that got drove
Yeah,
me in
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
direction.
yeah.
But I think I
Mhm.
kind of answered that. Um,
So in regards to this technology, can't and okay, this is where I was going with that. Because of this how all the tech companies collude together, right? Like you saw what happened to Trump. He didn't just get censored on one platform, he got censored on all of them at the same time. Alex Jones, same
yes.
thing. He didn't just get censored on one platform, he got censored on all the platforms at once. Is that an issue, the fact that they all actually collude together? And like how do you fight back against them like that? And when you're talking about anti-censorship, are you talking about brand new platforms where these platforms aren't even going to be used, or do you mean like find a way to not get censored on the mainstream platforms?
Wow, you're hitting all my talking points for me. That's awesome. Well, so obviously the first thing you do, right, when you're on these centralized platforms where you're fragile, you've got all this time invested in creating, editing, uploading all these videos, right? And you're fragile because you can get taken down. But these big tech platforms like YouTube, they call the shots, right? Because they've got the eyeballs looking at the screen. And so the first step is to move to those alternative platforms, some of which you've mentioned, I think, but things like BitChute, Rumble, X, etc. But like you said, there can be coordinated attacks where they take you down on all of them, and some of them have made a point out of being censorship resistant. Both X and Rumble claim that right now. But here's the deal: we don't know what types of pressures might be put on those people by advertisers, government, other actors to say, well, we wouldn't want anything happen to your servers, and get leaned on. And next thing you know, I mean, you wouldn't want to get a big audit on your taxes, would you? And so next thing you know, I mean, they may be taking people down as well. So we really have to look at some of these platforms that are truly decentralized, and some of those would be so yeah, I found it here someplace. I got a list. But the but some of them are like one of the technologies, and it's not really a platform, but the interplanetary file system is something we'll be talking about shortly. IPFS. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah,
But then there's
would talk about it all the time. He was the first time he would he was the first person I would hear mention it and refer.
good.
And eventually that's why he came on the Union Doesn't Want It, because it was kind of a new idea and he wanted to get it out there and let everybody know what it was about. And it seemed like he was also working, I don't know if he still is, but like kind of not just for video and content, but also for websites, like a similar type of technology where like your website exists on a similar type of platform where it can't be directly banned or censored or blocked or whatnot. So for people listening, what is it, for if just
Sure.
an overview?
Sure, it's like torrent on steroids. Basically, what IPFS does is think of it as a file sharing system more than anything else. What happens is you post your content, what have you. You could post any type of file you want onto IPFS. And what happens is that it gets assigned a content identifier, and anybody who has that content identifier can find your content as long as somebody on the network still has it. So rather than being an address that tells you where to go to get it, what happens, the content identifier is a hash and some other information put together that basically uniquely identifies that file. And as long as somebody has it, you'll be able to reach it. So when your stuff gets spread across IPFS, it is damn near uncensorable, because they would have to take down every single node that has that data on it.
So it's
And
like
we can
almost like
go ahead.
Napster, almost like, well, I guess in a weird way, because Napster, right? Like everybody's on this,
In a way,
right? Because it's like it's long.
yeah.
Everybody's kind of sharing that information, I guess. Really?
Mhm.
Maybe that's a bad
One
example.
of the
No,
well,
no, it's a good example. Peer to peer,
yeah, Napster is what led to
BitTorrent.
torrent, right? And then yeah, so this is kind of an evolution of the same thing. One of the nicest things about it is that if you put content on this system and we found a way to make it go viral, then what would happen is, you'd be afraid on centralized systems. Oh my goodness, it went viral and now the download speed is terrible and we're waiting forever. But on IPFS is the other way around, because everybody who is viewing that content is now sharing that content on the system. So what happens is it actually gets faster when more people are viewing
It's
it.
and it's anti-fragile.
I love that word.
The downside to IPFS is that it's an unfamiliar technology. It operates in a way that people aren't accustomed to file systems working. So that's the one downside.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yes. Yeah, sure, sure. So, one of the nicest things about it too is there's no headquarters. There isn't some head node controlling everything. Everything's distributed. The way you find the files is that when you punch them into an IPFS node, it uses something called the distributed hash table to go find the file for you and start getting it for you. And that, just like the rest of it, that's distributed too. There's not really an easy way to take it down. Other things are true, like most of the web, well, the web by definition uses DNS, right, in order to access a website. So if I punch in rickyverandas.com, what happens is a domain name server takes that and looks up and comes back and provides my browser with a physical address to go get the files, to go view your website. But if somebody decides one of the vectors that can be used to take down a content creator, especially somebody who has their own site, is just take them off the DNS servers. So what happens is that they don't get they don't get they don't well, anyhow, so they don't even get to the site. Even though your site's up and your server's functional and everything, they just can't get there. But there are pains associated with IPFS as it stands. It's not really searchable. There's no way to develop a community on there. It's just a bunch of files and content IDs. And the other thing is, well, I just said it, it's not searchable. The content IDs aren't in themselves anything really meaningful. So you have to, sorry. So what you have to do is we've got to find a way to make it searchable at least. So what we've done with, well, okay, so I'll take a step back. The first thing that we recommend people do with their content is spread it out, right? Use the content safe capabilities that Matt is offering today in order to make certain that your content is spread across multiple platforms. But then the next thing we want to do is we also want to get people onto IPFS. So we've been working on the Censor Guard, or it was being worked on before I ever got involved. But what Censor Guard does, it starts off as an appliance. It's very easy to post data onto IPFS. But then what it does is add something called ARNI, which is the Alexandria Rescue Network of Independent IPFS Engines. And if you're a Corbett listener, then you get the significance of the term Alexandria, right? But what ARNI does is it uses a reticulum network for orchestration. Reticulum is a network protocol that is fully encrypted and not affected by a lot of the normal web processes. And the content, what happens when you put content into IPFS using ARNI is it's going to package the content. So if I put up a video on from YouTube or something like that onto IPFS, I'm going to have at least 3 files that I'm posting, because I'm going to have the actual content, the video, I'm going to have a thumbnail, I'm probably going to have a description. And there are other things you would want in the package, such as metadata and things like that. But what ARNI does is actually groups that together so that it gets treated as a single thing. And that's helpful too, because then as you're reading descriptions, you can help decide which things you want to download and view. And the other thing about it is that ARNI, when you input your information, ARNI will catalog that, and now you have a search engine that actually works for the data, for some data on IPFS. So the data that was put onto IPFS using ARNI will be cataloged and it'll be searchable. Now, that won't work for things that did not use ARNI to put them up, but anybody on IPFS who has a content ID can still access this data because we are using IPFS. I don't know, is that clear? I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. And I'm not a tech guy, so you know, if it makes sense to me, I'm sure it'll make sense to most people listening. So for content creators or just people who are fans of content creators who are being censored, you know, like I said, I got kicked off YouTube. Del Bigtree got kicked off YouTube. Corbett got kicked off YouTube. A lot of great content creators get kicked off major platforms. And just because Rumble and X and all these platforms are being friendly to us now doesn't mean obviously that's going to last forever. So looking into the future and saying like, hey, let's make sure we have all our bases covered. Let's make sure we're protected if something does happen. I mean, that's something that Corbett constantly would talk about. I mean, for years, he would talk about like, hey, don't use YouTube, go to my website. Sam Tripoli says the same thing. Like, don't, go to my website because it's, it's the one spot, things aren't being censored and I can post things the way that I want without worrying about anything being censored or banned or whatnot. But how do we start using this technology if we're a content creator? And if you're just a fan of content creators that are being censored, like how do you promote this stuff? How do you start using it as just a place to search for content? I mean, is that a possibility? Like I know you're talking about search engines and whatnot. How does that all work?
Yes. So part of what people have to do is start taking a look at CensorGuard and Arnie to see what they can do. Some people will probably want to go ahead and run a full node. When you run, I've actually got a CensorGuard running under my desk here, and it's running a full IPFS node and it's functional, but it still needs some development work. And we're looking at a number of different ways we can develop this. And part of it is to give it a better graphical user interface, a better user experience. But then other things we need to look at are there are some clever ways you can access IPFS. And I actually put an article up on our website recently that discusses how you can use Brave to access IPFS today. Now, that doesn't get you an Arnie node, but at least you can access IPFS. Brave, with just a few mouse clicks, you can actually set up a full node for IPFS, and it's really, really simple. What we think we can do
Brave
is,
browser, right? Brave browser.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, the Brave browser. So if you're using the Brave browser, it's very easy. If you've got an IPFS link, you punch it in, and it'll say, "Oh, how do you want to access that? Do you want to go through a gateway, or do you want to set up a full node?" And if you say you want to set up a full node, then it'll go there. You can also access things via gateway. The problem with a gateway is that you're trusting somebody to be a go-between. You're going through whoever is running the gateway, and you're trusting that they actually serve you the data you asked for and not something else.
And the
that they're
major
not,
the major gateways are already censoring.
are they?
So yeah.
I did not know that.
IPFS.io. Yeah, IPFS.io. There will be times that you'll run across links and they'll say this link has been removed.
Ah, there you go. Yeah.
But it's still available on the IPFS network.
There you go. That right upper link with the lion and the IPFS symbol. If you click on that, that's the article on how to access IPFS from Brave.
And this is something content creators should be doing to their audience. If they're putting their content up on IPFS, they should be pitching Brave. Because one of the problems with Brave presently, Mark, you want to tell them what the people at Brave were saying about IPFS in their browser?
Yeah, it may be deprecated in the near future. Right now, you can follow these instructions in order to access IPFS. And anytime I'm running Brave on my machine, now I'm running a node also for IPFS, but they're talking about deprecating, and they just claim because nobody's using it. It's some really small percentage of users. And the other thing is that, the powers that be would probably rather that we did not use a system that can't be censored anyways. So that could be a problem. But one of the things we're thinking is that if we got enough people interested in it and they started using it, maybe Brave would decide, maybe we should keep that because it gives us a leg up on the other browsers that are out there. The other thing we're talking about as an improvement for Arnie, some development that we need to do is we need to build a plugin. If we can have Brave, the Brave browser with an IPFS node in it, then the next step should be to build an Arnie node on top of that. And that's something that we need to be developing, because we need to make this easy to access for everybody. And if it's just a couple more mouse clicks after you've set up the IPFS node, or maybe it's even the same process you use right now, then we think we could get people onto this system very quickly and easily. And what we really want to see is we want to make certain that content creators get eyeballs on what they're doing. What good is your content if it's not being seen, right? And the other nice thing about this is, even if somebody gets targeted, even physically, somebody says, well, we're gonna drop a hellfire on this guy's studio. I mean, stranger things have happened, honestly, in the history of mankind, but there are all kinds of things that could happen to a content creator, and your originals might be gone, but if you've distributed them on a system like this, you'll be able to go back and fetch your content because it'll still be there. Let's see, there are some other things we want to do when it comes to the development. And that's part of the things what we're looking to do is raise funds in order to enhance both Content Safe and Censor Guard. And when we're talking about Censor Guard, not only do we want a better graphical user interface and user experience, but we also want to do workflow integration for the content creator. So what happens with this system is, ideally, it's going to integrate with Content Safe, the service, in addition to this appliance. What will happen is you will put your content onto this device. It'll take care of the rest. So it goes ahead and puts it on IPFS, gets it cataloged for you, and then Content Safe comes along, scoops it up, posts it to, right now, is it 13, 14 platforms you have right now, Matt? Something like that,
it just keeps
right?
growing. Yeah, it keeps growing.
Boom. Blast it out to everybody. And by the way, you can tell them, make sure you check out my website, right? And you can also say, make sure you check us out on Censor Guard, on Arnie, or something to that effect, to say, hey, look, even websites can be canceled. We've seen it happen to content creators before, where their sites get taken down, or even folks trying to serve content like, what were the classics? I suppose Gab and Parler a few years back. They both made the mistake of using Amazon Web Services, and they got wiped off the face of the earth. Their websites just disappeared, and they had nothing. Parler was gone, right? And folks like Gab get targeted as well. But again, the bottom line is that that you've got another place where your information can be if all else fails.
Are you guys familiar with the work of Robert Epstein, Dr. Robert Epstein, or Zach Voorhees? Well, you know probably Zach, right?
Oh, I know Zach.
Yeah, Zach. He created Blast Out Video, which was supposed to be kind of a anti-censorship algorithms for people looking up video content. And then this guy, Dr. Robert Epstein, he's been on the Rogan podcast. I know Miriam Haneen has interviewed him, and I had him on my show. I thought it was probably one of the most important Rogan podcasts ever that was kind of not really talked about much, because what he did, he's a tech guy who basically started a company that analyzes how big tech is censoring people, how big tech is manipulating people, and all the games and tactics they use. And his story is just insane. And the stuff that he uncovered is insane. I remember when he was on the Rogan podcast, they were talking about like, oh yeah, they're censoring us. And he's just like, no, Joe, you don't get how bad it really is. Like, they have scientists, psychologists understanding exactly what to feed you and what to manipulate, what to censor and what not to censor, to get you to think and feel and perceive certain things in the narrative that they want. And, it really is social engineering at its finest. And,
this is actually just to kick Elon, because I don't like Musk. I think that X is basically that. It's been censored, but only in the sense to get sympathy to pull us in. And if you're not aware that X wants to dominate the entire market, they want to get rid of Facebook. They want to get rid of Google. They want to be that engine of social control. And we have to be careful. We need to build community owned resources, not corporate, not government, community owned, which means nobody owns it. It's a commons.
Yeah.
So we need a digital commons.
On X today, even if you show or say the wrong thing, there's still going to be some, our community wants you to know. What do they call it? Community opinions. I forget what they call it. But rather than knocking it off, what they do is they put in stuff that basically says, oh, what you're saying is a lie. It's like fact checking
Right.
almost.
Do you
Right.
think
Which is easy to manipulate. Which, Mark, I think you should go into the next steps of Arnie, where we want that to go after
Yes.
just search.
Yes, I can do that. I think you're
Yeah.
going to say something, Ricky.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask your guys' opinion on something because obviously you be much more intelligent in regards to these topics than I am. But so at one point, I remember Alex Jones was being like kind of a shadow banned a little bit. I believe it was Alex. It was somebody that got reinstated on Twitter, but for some reason there was still evidence of them being shadow banned. And then they reach out to Elon Musk, and Elon Musk actually it said that they had to find where how this is happening because it was like somewhere in the back end where some programmer was or some engineer in the company who was kind of a rogue person was still putting some things in the software or in the platform that was censoring certain people or certain things. Is that possible where
Maybe.
I
things
think
could
it
be
is.
Maybe.
complex?
The
Where
code, I mean, you've got some huge code base back there, right? And maybe something's still buried in there from before, right?
I
But I think you're right to be critical, Matt. That's what I'm seeing in your face is you're critical of that idea.
Well, I mean, without them knowing, I'm not so sure. Unless, well, of course, the one thing I did hear when Musk took over was that the work ethic at Twitter was terrible. And that they had fully paid employees that were taking 6 months off to do on what was it, a psychology leave or stress leave. It's like it was a complete train wreck of a corporation. Well, of course, most corporations are train wrecks, but it's just they got good PR departments that make them look professional. That's Google, by the way.
well,
Google used to innovate, and Google has not innovated in 15 years.
Well,
Well,
it used to not
so
be
it-
evil.
yeah, used to not.
yeah.
Well, you guys,
Do the right thing.
a lot of these corporations aren't actually, they get all the credit for the technology, but typically they're not the ones developing it. They're buying it from a smaller firm, a smaller company. They buy the technology. Microsoft, yeah. I mean, there's a great documentary called, because before I was addicted to podcasts, I was addicted to documentaries. But there's a great documentary called Revolution OS, I think it's called, or is it OS Revolution? I might have that backwards, but either way, it's a open source revolution. That's what it stands for, and it's all about like the history of the internet and how like all these programmers and software guys, like all the the origin story of the internet was all about it being open source, and it was all about like sharing this stuff, sharing programs, sharing software, sharing all this stuff, and then it was like Microsoft and all these corporations are like, no, we need to be able to control it because that's how we're going to, make money and develop better stuff. But they weren't really even developing stuff in the first place. They were just stealing other people's technology or buying it and then, promoting it as their own. Steve Jobs again. Like, was he a part of any great technology's origin story? No, he just promoted this stuff. Same thing with Elon Musk. Same thing. The electric car was not. It wasn't. Right. Didn't.
Apple is Debian Linux with its own proprietary interface on top. Android is Debian Linux fitted for mobile devices. The thing to remember now is there was about a 5-year period, maybe longer, back in the 2000s that Microsoft and other groups behind the scenes tried to get legal action against these Linux distributions to get them shut down, to say that they were using proprietary code, blah, 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 blah. That failed. So what happens now is you get large groups, Red Hat, Ubuntu. These are now corporate entities, and they are now turning open source software into something closed source.
Yeah.
Now,
That's why I said
switched.
has to be community run. There's no option. You can't make it corporate, and you should not. This is going to piss some people off. You should not ever mix things like this with cryptocurrencies because it's too easy to regulate that away. And that doesn't mean I'm against crypto. I just think that crypto should be crypto. Cryptocurrencies should be their own space. Don't mix them with file systems. Don't mix them with social networks. This is a controversial thing to say because I understand why people want to do that. But the problem is the regulatory framework, and you're never going to get rid of that as far as I can tell. So it's a no-go with mixing cryptocurrencies, technologies.
Well, and even if the regulatory framework improves in the near future, then
Right.
there's nothing that says the pendulum won't swing back the other way. Big problem
That's right.
now is the lawfare environment we're in right now. Everything's a security unless it's Bitcoin, right? And it's only because they don't have a headquarters for Bitcoin.
and just
Yeah, but they do have the Bitcoin Foundation, which is pretty influential.
well, I can see how crypto, you would see like Odyssey, for example, they were kind of like a anti-censorship platform, and then they were using crypto. Rockfin, kind of same thing, and I can see how they go hand in hand. You would find a lot of people in the alternative media community were very excited about cryptocurrency because it seemed like, hey, look, there's no central bank, there's no, we have control of our, finances, of our transactions. So it goes hand in hand with that libertarian, pro freedom, anti big government type of mentality. But it does, like most things, it becomes a dogma and it becomes tribalistic. I remember when we did the Union of the Unwanted crypto show, we did a roundtable discussion, and we had Max Kaiser on there. We had a bunch of, I think Hotep Jesus was on there. We had a bunch of great people, and it was crazy how tribalistic the Bitcoin people were. Like anybody talked about any other, we had the Kingsley Edwards from Afloat, and
I was in one of those calls.
okay, yeah.
I remember.
And
Yeah,
I remember
the maximalists. Yeah.
anytime you talk about any other crypto, people would lose their mind. I'm like, now you've lost you've lost the reason why we all got excited about this. It wasn't because we were like gonna be married to this one idea or this one crypto. It was because we loved in general, the whole idea, this idea of, having control and somebody not controlling us. So, that's the problem with a lot of these technologies is people get obsessed with one and then thinks this is going to be our savior. This is going to be the one that, but like you said, we should be open-minded. And same thing with X. This kind of reminds me of X because like you were saying, something that people don't realize, and you hit on it, Matt, is that Elon Musk is literally trying to create not just a social media platform that has all these features, but literally a social media platform that controls everything. Like he wants it to be your wallet. He wants it to be your literally everything. Like just one app to literally have all your content and all your information. And that's what's so confusing about Elon Musk, because sometimes he's having conversations about the dangers of AI. The next second or the next sentence, he's having a conversation about how he's helping develop it. So it's like, that's the part that's so confusing is like
putting chips in people's
Musk,
brains.
Musk is a big PR campaign. That's what Musk is. He's Tony Stark, but he's not really Tony Stark. He's not a genius. As far as I can tell, I don't understand. Maybe his family has, because he's from South Africa. Maybe his family has some connection to somebody. I know he started PayPal, whatever that means. Because Musk is not a genius. He doesn't even have good stage presence. He's a construct. And whoever's behind Musk is using him that way. SpaceX, the real thing about SpaceX is the satellites. which don't get nearly as much play as Mars. Mars is junk. He's not intending to go to Mars. He can't go to Mars. He would kill all the astronauts if he tried to go to Mars. It makes no sense to emphasize. Neuralink is garbage. It's either a fundraising, capital raising venture or something like that. Everything Musk does is obfuscated. The real stuff is probably the satellites. The rest of it, I'm not so sure about the
There's
rest.
something he said for having a bunch of low Earth orbiters in polar orbits, covering every part of the Earth all the time.
Have you
What
looked at
could
the
you get that
map?
for?
Have you looked at the map? It goes all the way down to Antarctica now, all the way up
Well,
to the
it's
North Pole.
well, they're polar
It's
orbiters, yeah.
everywhere.
So by
Well,
definition, they're going over the
if you
poles. Yeah.
wanted a global central currency that could be accessed anywhere on the planet, that's what you would need. Would need that.
Well, I'm just throwing out these surveillance possibilities too.
Well,
You
I'm
don't
just
know
saying,
everything that went
it's
up on
hand in
those birds.
hand, right? It's hand in hand. This guy's not the savior, just like Trump's not the savior.
Thank you.
There's a book,
That's so correct.
and you guys, you know who Matt Farah is from the Smoke and Tire podcast and Smoke and Tire YouTube channel? He's been on
Don't
Rogan
know that one.
years ago. He was he's a gearhead, but like kind of just a fun to talk to type of gearhead, and had a real popular YouTube channel, and I think it's still popular. Had a real popular podcast. But I had him on, and I remember him talking about the book Ludicrous, and he actually lives in California, so he's constantly around people who are super pro Tesla and Elon Musk at the time. And he's like, you got to read this book Ludicrous. He's like, it's about how everything that Elon Musk is just a Ponzi scheme. Everything he does is a Ponzi scheme. He's like, gets you really excited about this new idea, and then you pre-order all these things that aren't even developed yet. He doesn't even know if he can produce, and it helps fund the last thing that he promised you that he didn't actually have funds for or whatnot. And he's like, it just this Ponzi scheme of like, hey, now get excited about this, and then he uses those funds to help finish the last thing he was trying to develop. And like you said, he's a great marketer. He's great at just like getting you excited, and because everybody's convinced he's a genius and convinced that he's going to accomplish all these amazing things. And don't get me wrong, I like to push back towards the car industry having, he had everything up against him in regards to the car industry. Like, he was bypassing dealerships, which they were doing everything they could to basically, stop him from doing that, because they're like, no, you can't just buy a car right from the factory. Like, you need to go through a dealership. That's how this industry works. And he's just like, no, screw you. I'm going to, do it my way. And I like the fact that he's like, let's reinvent the wheel. And I do like that part, but he's also naive in a lot of aspects. Like, I know when Teslas first came out, or pushing the idea, the screens, right? Everybody would ask like, hey, why is my iPhone, have this amazing high def screen, but cars have these crappy screens? So he put these high tech screens in cars, and it's like, what he didn't understand was like, hey, the technology in the car has to last the life of the car. So your phone usually gets replaced, in a couple years, more or less. Your TV, all these things that have great high definition, like, gets replaced fairly quickly. But like, the simple technology in your car, the reason why it looks simple and outdated is because it has to last as long as the car does. So some people have a car for 10 years. Some people have a car for 15 years. Like, nobody has a big screen TV or a phone for 15 years. And so it's like, there's all these things that he was kind of naive to, but yet he gets overly excited and says, I'm going to put this high tech screen. And then next thing you know, things are falling apart or whatnot. So there is sometimes reasons to why things are the way they are. But I do like the fact that he's like, screw the car industry. Let's, I'm going to find a way to push my product out there. But I also have a problem with the fact that people still think that driving an electric car means you're environmentally friendly and you're helping the environment. Like this idea that you're just completely just ignoring conflict minerals, you're ignoring the fact that we don't have the infrastructure to charge these things, you're ignoring the fact that we don't even have a environmentally friendly way of disposing of these batteries, which people don't talk
They're
about.
they're safety hazards. See what happens when one of those things catches on fire.
Oh, absolutely. Remember what car was it? The Fisker, right? That's what put the Fisker out of business. The Fisker was a electric car. It was actually a guy who worked for Tesla, and actually Elon Musk sued him because he thought that he took some of the styling cues and some of the information that he gathered working for the company and started his own car maker. So he started the Fisker, and then the Fisker had like some dealership near like Florida, somewhere in the near the water in Florida, and there's some like big storm that came, and then all the Fiskers started just blowing up, and then basically put them out of business because now people are like, these things are dangerous. I can't go buy a car that potentially I could drive through a car wash and blow up, you know. So it's it is one of those things where they are slightly dangerous, and realistically, some of these law, like I live in Massachusetts, and some of these laws that they're pushing this idea, like I believe our governor, I think is it 2025, no, or maybe 2035, I don't know, somewhere in the near future they're going to ban all the selling of any gas engines, and it's just like
You know what happened in Britain with that? It was supposed to already be enacted. They had to push it forward 5 years.
yeah, that's what I assume is going to happen because there's no.
It'll be pushed forward forever.
Yeah,
Because why?
No.
Have you ever seen a 16-wheeler electric truck?
No, yeah, not yet. I mean, I know they're going to promote.
No, you'll never see one.
Why is that?
Never get the range. You won't get the range for
You'll
an
never
all
get
day. Yeah.
too
Or you're going
much
to start
weight.
sacrificing cargo capacity.
So that's why you're seeing already in Europe like these mini delivery trucks. That's never going to work. It's just logistically impossible.
So you don't think battery technology would ever advance?
I think it's going to have to advance like orders of magnitude beyond what it is now. And I just don't see that happening.
Well, who knows? Right. But still,
I don't see.
If you find a way to make it happen, they'll
against
suppress it.
Well, right. Yeah, because think about it. This is one of the arguments. Have you ever seen that? I'll have to dig it up if you haven't seen it. Have you seen that thing about this crazy guy back in the 70s that said that actually radioactivity was not, there was no, let me remember how he said it. He said he could swim in the cooling pool of a nuclear power plant and it wouldn't affect his health. Have you seen that?
I
have
have
you seen that?
I know that a lot of people think that it's propaganda, that the demonization of nuclear power is propaganda for other industries.
And this guy, I'll find you the video later. This guy, his contention back in the 70s was the easy access of the normal person to cheap energy is being prevented.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get a battery that could drive that 16-wheeler down for 1,000 or 2,000 or say 5,000 miles on one charge, they're not going to let you have that.
Yeah. Hey,
sort of like flying cars. I know we keep talking about back in the 1940s, they said everybody would have an airplane by the 1980s. Did it happen?
Well,
no, because you can't control the movement of people if everybody had an airplane.
Well, and you would be able to leave your 15-minute city.
Yeah, that's somebody, I think it was actually on the Union Unwanted, somebody mentioned that some of this Boeing whistleblower stories and all the stories coming out about how unsafe flying is could be potentially a way of scaring people into being isolated and just staying in their, in their cities and not
Oh
traveling.
yeah,
And it kind of makes sense because
yeah.
I think the percentage, they said only 3% of Americans leave the country, which is
I would say only 3% have passports.
I think they said 70% of Americans don't have valid passports, something like that, which is insane because all the traveling. But I guess you could do a lot of traveling, but just do a lot of traveling in the States, so you don't
But
really.
I can flip this both directions. I think we should have the ability to. I don't believe in borders, by the way. And I understand that that's a hot thing to say, but I don't believe in borders. What we're seeing right now is not really open borders. It's a kind of uh it's a kind of warfare. It's not really about open borders. If this wasn't being engineered the way it is, you could have open borders, and we had open borders for centuries, and we didn't see this except during famines,
Mhm.
right? So basically, or warfare. Uh, and we have warfare. I forgot my point. Where was I going with this? Uh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I can flip this both directions. I honestly feel that I don't really want to travel anymore. And it's part of it's because of all the insanity that's in the world, but part of it's just because I, I want to live inside my own community. I want to know who my neighbors are. I really don't think I need necessarily to be gallivanting all around the world, seeing places that are not really connected to me.
Now, Matt, where did you grow up and where do you live?
Okay, let me explain that. What happened with that is that whenever I was in my 20s, I was even though I wasn't really red pilled yet, I was very disaffected by American society. I'll be honest. I just, I was 25 whenever I moved to Southeast Asia. And I was like, I just can't stand American society. And I got here and I loved it. I still like it, but you know what? After 30 years, I know all the cracks and crevices of this society. I know all the bad sides and I know all the good sides. And somewhere along the way, I realized that running away from things is a bad idea,
And you built your
right?
family there.
And I built my family here and I said, okay, if I were to migrate back, I would just be running away again. So no. Okay. If I had come to this conclusion whenever I was 20 years old, I'd still be in the US. But I'm here. So that explains that.
Well, I also think there's a lack of culture in the US. You go to other places and they still have traditions, they still have culture, they have things that resemble their culture, foods, music. The problem with the US, it's like it's such a melting pot that everything's so melted that you don't see any image. There's no mold of anything, right? And you know,
Well,
I live in a small little Portuguese community. We also have a lot of Polish in town, so it's like a mix of Polish and Portuguese. But we have like little Polish bakeries, little Portuguese bakeries. We have butcher shops. We have all these things that represent these cultures and the people who live here. But after the Great Reset, the COVID lockdowns, did a great job of fast forwarding what they were trying to do anyways and attempting to do, which is killing all the small businesses and just making every town and city look the same. So it's like before, I live in Massachusetts, like I could travel to, New Orleans and there's certain types of food and restaurants and mom and pop places down there that I could go and experience the culture and the people there. But now, little by little, like every city, every town, every country is losing that. Now you go to, you watch the Olympic ceremony, opening ceremony, and it's like I get a taste of American trannies. It's like it's like the same culture everywhere. Like they're just force feeding you McDonald's, Burger King,
Well, I'll tell you something interesting. Here, the lockdowns actually enhanced local business. So I have seen more now. It is different than it was before. Okay, there's a shift. The high end restaurants, for instance, are gone. The independently owned high end restaurants, they're gone. They couldn't sustain themselves. It's the mom and pops that emerged. And I'll tell you why it happened. There were no COVID relief checks here. So, in fact, there was COVID relief, but it all got siphoned up by local officials and it went to build hotels and, uh, just general graft and corruption. But the average guy had to figure out how to survive. So they started restaurants. It's the most everybody's got to eat, right? So we have a plethora of small restaurants that emerged out of all this. And I mean that's a whole other show that I think that what set the stage for the destruction of small businesses in the US is not COVID. It's the regulatory frameworks that were in place for decades that led to the death of small businesses. And then COVID was just like the cherry on top.
No, I completely agree. And something that you did mention that I want to kind of just highlight again, because it is kind of a controversial statement or opinion, or maybe unpopular opinion, the idea that I think you're 100% right. The border crisis isn't a organic border crisis. For years and years and years, right? I would talk to conservatives and they would talk about the border, immigrants, all these immigrants. I'm like, yeah, but I'm like, oh, what country is your family from? I'm like, yeah, we're all immigrants. I'm like, one thing that would drive me nuts about immigrants is they all want to shut the door behind them, right? So it's like once we're in and accepted, it's like let's shut the door behind us and make sure the next group of immigrants don't come in. And but I do think like now it's becoming a much bigger issue. For a long time, people would talk about, oh, the Latin Americans, this and that. And I'm like, yeah, but they're, are you doing the jobs that they're doing? Like, probably not, right? Like a lot of the landscapers and that like more labor intensive work.
Roofing.
By the 90s, you could not find a high school or college student who would go into a tobacco field and harvest tobacco in Kentucky because the Mexicans had taken all of it. And that's because one, the native white guy he wasn't going to get his hands dirty out in the field.
You're right.
No, right. That wasn't going to happen. So you just hire a Mexican who could do it for a fraction of the pay. The border crisis is a different thing. Back in the 20th century, what we had was they wanted the elite. They wanted them. I know all opposition. My parents ran hotels, motels back in the 90s. There was this boom in business, like I'd say maybe between Papa Bush and Clinton or around Clinton, something like that. That's the unemployment rate in Kentucky was 4%. They could not find an employee that they could keep because they would bring the person in. They would be from, say, like government housing. They'd work for a day, then they'd run off and they'd never report again. So a lot of this has got, I mean, I'm not blaming American society completely. There is definitely something nefarious going on with bringing over 6 million people, basically Venezuelan prisoners is what I'm hearing. That's got a different purpose.
And Chinese, military age Chinese people, which is weird. And then there's all these conversations about giving illegals their citizenship if they join the military. And obviously the military has been struggling with recruitment for a long time now. So that'd be a great way of recruiting. Also, if you look at big picture and you zoom out, who would be more likely to, if you had some type of military lockdown, some police state. Well, if you have a bunch of people who are new to the country who don't really have a connection to the people who live here, they might be more likely to listen to.
Mhm.
Maybe, but
They
let me
might
tell you
not
what I think.
understand that oath about the Constitution, right?
Right, but let me say what I think this is more about. You could never get the native population of the U.S. to go to war with Russia because the amount of death and suffering that that's going to entail is gargantuan. So, a message to all the migrants who are joining the military: you're cannon fodder. They're going to send you to Russia and they're going to kill tens of millions of you. That's what they want.
Mark, you were going to say something?
Oh no, I was just saying it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
people with the intent to just kill people, millions and millions of people, no matter where they came from. It's horrible.
Well, I made that
And the
joke.
same for the people in Northern Africa going to Europe. That's what they want to do with you
Or
too.
or the Russians you want to start the war with, right? I mean, it's all the same.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're just killing recklessly and stupidly, and we'll be lucky if we just don't end the world. Somebody some crazy person decides to press the button. So
Well, that's that whole theory that Alexander Dugin has, the dangerous, speaking of censorship, the most censored philosopher in the world, Alexander Dugin from Russia. Some people call him Putin's brain. Some people might know him by that name, but he was a influential philosopher to Putin. And I had the first person to translate his books into English on my show, Professor Michael Millerman, who actually got banned from Canadian universities because of it. More censorship stories, but Michael Millerman's very fascinating and one of the most fascinating guests I've ever had on my show. And Alexander Dugin's philosophies are super interesting. And like, when I live in this world of conspiracy and alternate history and all these type of topics that and suppressed technology, like I'm just intrigued with whatever is being censored. So when I heard Alexander Dugin was a censored philosopher from Russia, I'm like, well, now I want to know what he's talking about. And one of his theories is this idea, we were kind of joking about the open ceremony in Paris for the Olympics and all the symbolism and all the satanic stuff and all the transgender stuff that they were pushing. Well, Alexander Dugin has a perspective that that's one of the reasons. It's more than just geopolitical resource money grab type of thing, but it's more about Russia is a pushback to this Western woke philosophy that's overtaken all of the Western countries, from everything from Western Europe. I mean, my country of Portugal, where I was born, it's sad to watch my parents watch, Portuguese TV, and then every other show is with a gay couple or some man dress up as a woman or some woman, which really doesn't. And it's okay to see some of that because, TV you would expect to represent some of reality, but that's not reality. Like 50% of
Right.
what I see in the world isn't, the LGBTQ, whatever, world. It's average people and people who are men dress up as men and women dress. I don't know how to put it without offending everybody, but it's you get what I mean. And so I kind of subscribe to this idea that some of the dislike of Russia is more than just resources and whatnot, but it's because they are more of a traditional Christian country that pushes back against these type of things. And
Well, and I think you have to look. I don't know about the leadership of Russia. I'm not sure about Putin. Dugin, I do really think Dugin is an idealist. Is Putin an idealist? I'm skeptical, but the average Russian is different than the average American.
well,
And they're more, it's more like here, actually, in the sense that you get, and it's changing here in the Philippines too, but the locals are very rabidly traditional. So while they allow the Southeast Asian attitude toward LGBTQ stuff is kind of like, we don't care as long as you don't cause us trouble. Right. So the only time you run into a problem here is when someone gets obnoxious and they're transgender or they're gay and they become obnoxious. And I won't go, they're very, very rude stories, but that you can actually see people getting beaten up and murdered, not because they're gay or not because they're transgender, but because they were just jerks. And it would happen if you were heterosexual too, and you were a jerk. They beat you up. But the point here is you got societies that are much more traditionally oriented. It's not necessarily the leadership that's traditional. They know that they can't really do that with their populace.
Right. And so what they say has to work with their population. So regardless of what their perspectives are, what they say and to some extent do will tend to reflect the population and the culture that they're emerging
And if you
from.
look, that really does say something about America. Now, I think it's also because it's a melting pot that people have had to learn to accommodate. But there's also the education system of the United States, which is a dumpster fire. And it's not, yeah, education. It's not really about education, which is one of the reasons I left. Is I experienced it. I experienced the indoctrination system all the way up to the postgraduate level. I was fed up with it. And I was so happy to go somewhere else and get away from it. But having sent my kids through the system here, it was an interesting navigation because we're heavily influenced by the US.
Do we want to try and cover some of the sensor guard features we want to do in the future?
Let's claw this back here before we run out of time.
It's my fault. I was just going to ask you about CrowdStrike too, but I guess I'll hold on to that question.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll talk about what kind of development we really want to do for both Content Safe and Sensor Guard. Now, with Matt's platform, with his Content Safe, what we really want to do is we want to make certain that we get. I mean, Matt's talking about a lot of different features that go way beyond the syndication features. But some of the most important things we're thinking about from an anti-censorship perspective, and you can go ahead and amplify this, Matt, but some of it is actually about making certain that we have a better dashboard for the users to use and a little more automation than Matt is currently using, because we think that that platform has great potential for growing by leaps and bounds beyond where it is right now, just because of the assistance that it offers to content creators. I don't know if you wanted to talk about any of those other features you were talking about, Matt, for Content Safe. If you don't, we can move on to the sensor guard. Oh no, we lost your mic.
You there, Matt?
Uh-oh, I'm not hearing you. Oh,
I lost my audio. Hold on. Well, I guess Mark, you want to hit on some of the other topics that
sure.
you can hit on. He figures that.
I'll talk about Sensor Guard, and Matt can touch on some of the other content safe features that are projected out there ways. But for Sensor Guard, I mentioned earlier we want to give it a better interface. Right now, what we've got, it functions. It's a little bit clunky, but we also want to do things like workflow integration. Just make it really easy for somebody to work it into their workflow, make it really easy to transfer data across somebody's own network from whatever computer they're editing their content on and shuffling it over to the system and letting it just take it from there. So make it a way to flow nicely for them. And some of it might be as simple as browser integration, where you go into your browser and it allows you to upload your videos to your Content Safe. Oh, you got it back. Do you want to talk about the Content Safe stuff?
Oh yeah. The integration into Sensor Guard in particular, right?
Mm-hmm. Really, yeah, but you were talking about some other functions too, I think.
Right, which would go beyond Content Safe. From a Content Safe standpoint, what we'd like to see is our content creators put their stuff up on IPFS first. We'd like to be that to be the starting point, that everything gets backed up to IPFS first. Now, that being said, we've also got mechanisms for onboarding people gradually into this. In fact, today I'm supposed to be getting our own version of Dropbox up. So we'll be offering the ability to upload your files to us, and then we can distribute from there. But the end goal here is IPFS as the source for all video. What Mark was referring to is what else could we do with CensorGuard? The goal with CensorGuard is to provide a community platform for social networking. This is not meant to be a Facebook or a Twitter or X. It's meant to be a community-based platform where we can give verified identities to one another. We can provide file sharing to one another, but we could also have posts, and we could then rate videos. We can provide algorithms for rating videos and content.
Transparent algorithms.
Yeah. Right, exactly. We want to have absolutely transparent algorithms that you could review the code and know exactly how these algorithms work. We'd like the ability for the user and a technical user to be able to write his own algorithms so that he can tailor an algorithm.
You might want to tweak, for instance, what is being offered to you, which things are being floated to the top of your feed for yourself as well as for your community. And by the way, people have different value systems, right? So some content is stuff that you and your community will not want to see. And you want to have ways to filter stuff for you, for yourself.
Our assumption is that everything is blacklisted from the very beginning, unless you explicitly allow it. And then to
control
make
what's
that
on your node.
Right. And then you could have degrees and algorithms for releasing what would I be willing to look at? What do I want stored on my node? And I think that this is really the future. And I really do think that we pull this off. This is really a major, this is not just a technological change, guys. This is a cultural change that we're pushing for.
I'd like to touch on the monetization aspect of this as well, because we had a discussion earlier about cryptocurrency. And here's the thought we have on that, is that there may be self-sovereign identities that use blockchains and that sort of thing being used here, and probably a number of cryptocurrencies. What we want to do is we want to be crypto agnostic. We want to say, we don't care what your favorite cryptocurrency is. We want to encourage you to use it here and to make payments to each other with it. So that way, while we are not linked and tying ourselves to a cryptocurrency or a token that could get us in trouble or get certain individuals in trouble, or starts, gets outlawed, whatever. What we're doing is just make it so that people can use what they want to use on that network. Let's see what else
and other projects I'm working with presently, because I do have some side projects that I consult for, and this has been the whole goal. It's not to dismiss crypto. No, we love crypto, but to provide mechanisms for exchanging crypto that really they're not linchpinned into the system, that it won't work without crypto. I don't know if you saw that Odyssey had to switch to a different cryptocurrency.
Arweave.
Yeah. So they couldn't have their own crypto, but they could use someone else's crypto that was in a jurisdiction that the SEC apparently at the moment can't touch. And hopefully, that saves them. I hope. Because I like what Odyssey is doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a fan of Odyssey too. It's just, I don't know. Don't know if this change will be helpful for them or not. Hope for the best.
We'll see. We'll see.
I know there's complaints about Rockfin and their crypto changes, and just honestly, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me how it works. But Rockfin getting crypto. Initially, people were excited about the way they were monetizing content creators, and now people are like, the value has completely dropped, and it's very hard to make any money on Rockfin. So it's there's pros and cons to crypto, and I'm still in in the middle of like, okay, is it something that uh we can kind of focus on as a content creator, like, okay, because some people completely were pushing like, hey, I want donations, I want everything to be crypto. I mean, what's your opinion on that? Do you think that eventually there has to be one dominant crypto to really keep the value at?
I don't. The original vision, despite what the Bitcoin people say, original vision of the cryptocurrency industry or the community was a diversity of tokens. The the way I was introduced to this was, imagine if every city had its own token and that you could spend that token. And whenever you go from city to city, there's an automatic exchange process. There's a plethora of markets emerge in which you've got exchange rates between cities, and it's all done automatically.
Mm-hmm.
This to me, that's what I imagine cryptocurrencies being.
And some might be stable coins, some might be backed by gold, silver, oil, who knows, right? The
Right.
the definitely I'll take like a Ron Paul kind of attitude toward currency, which is that let people use what they want to use. And I think what'll happen is that people will gravitate towards things that make more sense over time. But um I think keeping a diverse number of different types of currencies is a positive thing. I mean, even if I show up to a store and I want to pay with gold backs, or I want to pay with Bitcoin, or
Yeah.
you name it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. This is the skeptics about crypto. I have to agree with them on this. If you're going to have a cryptocurrency, it should be easy for you to turn back into something tangible. But what we're seeing with like the CBDCs is the attempt to get rid of all tangible mechanisms of exchange. Um, uh, I know a bank that they're having you enter a special program to be able to use checks now. Otherwise, they will not protect you from fraud anymore. Uh, and that's crazy. Checks have been around forever. You should be able to exchange money that way. You should be able to use paper money if you really want to. Uh, I just think that we have to take back monetary system for ourselves.
Yeah, without a doubt. And so, as we wind down, what for content creators who are listening, or like, who are the people you guys want to reach? And then if you had a elevator pitch on on like, hey, what do you guys do? And what are your goals? Who do you want to reach? How do people help if they do have resources or talents or skills or finances to help in regards to your goal and pushing these projects forward? Yeah, reach out to them. Hit on any other things that maybe you haven't hit on yet that you think are important, and yeah, expand on that stuff.
Yeah, the anti-censorship technical committee's uh, charter is really about all kinds of decentralized technologies. And right now, we're going after content safe and censor guard. But the thing is that long term, we expect to look at a lot of other things, whether it's Portal or Bastion, or I mean, there's stacks of different technologies and platforms and capabilities out there. And just like we were talking about with the cryptocurrencies, there may be a lot of different solutions. I know we're gravitating towards this one right now, but that doesn't mean that's the only thing we're ever going to look at. And so what we want to do is, as a an incubator, we want to develop these technologies and people helping us identify the target technologies for us to pursue or even roll into what we're already doing. Um, that's positive. Another thing that we would like is content creators who are interested in this technology. What we need to do is we need to build a network in order to move forward from where we are today, because a lot of what we want to do is we basically want to go do some crowdfunding. But the problem with crowdfunding is you can't just put your crowdfunding idea out there and expect a crowd to show up. You have to bring your crowd. That's the explanation that I've received from multiple people. You've got to bring the crowd. So what we're doing right now is we're trying to reach out and get people's attention, get interest developed in this, get a crowd involved, and the first thing we would try to do is we'd try to get some of these sensor guard boxes with content safe integrated in them to a series of content providers or content creators, and have them start using it and start building, kind of priming the pump in order to move forward. So what we're looking for is, yes, we're looking for technical people. We're also looking for non-technical people who are interested in how do we fight censorship, so we can start building a dialogue, so we can start building a message, and we can start getting more people interested, and we can find ways to get these things funded and really, really achieve the potential that content safe and censor guard have, as well as some other technologies over time. I don't know. That's my thought. You might add to that too, Matt.
I think we're looking for projects. Maybe established projects, people who are doing a really good work, a really great tool, but they're lacking funding. And we want to help those groups find funding. Not only funding, but talent, connecting them with people that would use their technology better, helping them with marketing. I think that that's been woefully missing from privacy, anti-censorship, all of these communities. Back in the day, I did an audit of GitHub and I found like 100 projects on privacy and encryption. Most of those are dead now. No traction. Some of them were really good ideas too, but there was just no funding, not enough talent to keep it going. We need to be, frankly, I talked to another guy who's not in this call about having a show dedicated to this kind of stuff. But my bandwidth is pretty limited. I'm giving all this over to Mark. That's what Paracontrarian can still continue.
Although it's different branding now, so I'm just
Yeah.
a guy at ACTC.
Is AI going to play a factor in any of this?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. There's no escaping that. I think real machine learning technologies are going to be a boon to what we do, providing transcripts, which is already happening, providing search, providing the ability to query a show and ask a question of the host, even though the show's not active, based on the transcript, based on the series of interviews. How would this person answer a question? That's where I think we should be going.
Awesome.
And that's good.
So for listeners, where's the best places to keep up with your work, your projects, help you guys, contact you guys if you want to put any personal information out there? Let people know, because there might be somebody listening that's like, hey, you know what these guys are doing sounds interesting. I want to reach out. Maybe I have somebody I can hook you up with. Maybe, they have their own ideas they want to share. What's the best way of keeping up with you guys and staying connected?
The best thing is actually just the website. It's anticen.com. That's ANTI-CEN, as in short for censorship.com. On that site, we've got a few different things. There's a contact us page on there. There's also an ability to sign up for email lists. You'll find that on some of the pages, actually on that very first page. If you go to the home page, you'll find, if you click on ACTC, you see where it says sign up for email updates. That's one thing you can do. You can also use the contact us. We also have a donation page, which allow people to, uh, contribute financially to help us move forward. And on there, we'll take your credit cards, we'll take Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, you name it, right? So we've got a stack of different cryptos on there that we'll accept. Just like we were saying earlier, we're not going to narrow down to one and say you got to use this, but we're open to donations in a number of different ways that might help us move forward.
Gold bars are most especially welcome.
What's that? Gold bars?
Yeah, gold bars are especially welcome.
I'll give you the shipping address.
Have you guys familiar with what's his name? I just had him on my show, Tony. Let me go to my main page. He 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 just started working with Sam recently in regard to gold. Where was he? Oh, right here. He runs what was it? Wise Wolf, and what's his other company? It's like Wise Wolf, CO Wise Wolf Gold and Silver Exchange, Wolfpack
It's
Gold.
very recent.
Yeah, he does. He talked about how hard it is to just find product, to find gold. He's just like traveling all over the place, just trying to find it where he can. And he works with he started working with Tripoli recently, and just basically works with like getting people gold. And he has like what does he call it? It's like a little uh, it's like $10 a month for kids if they want to start collecting gold. What does he call it? I don't know, whatever he calls it. There's a name for it. It's not like the Cub program or something, but it's like some cute little name for it. But he's like, I don't even make any real money off it. He's like, I'm literally just like, he's like, I thought it'd be awesome to get kids into it and getting them to get excited about getting the gold and whatnot. So it's really cool.
Well, just look at how much the price of gold went up. I don't know if you followed that. In last year, it doubled. Silver didn't double, but gold did.
Yeah,
It's
I think
quite
silver
amazing.
could really explode, but that's my opinion.
Well,
we'll see what it actually does.
historically, controversial
So-
political elections always get a $50 per ounce silver price or higher. Just saying.
Well, and the gold to silver ratio, we could go down the rabbit hole on this one too, right? but the ratio is crazy, and silver has a huge potential upside. Not investment advice.
No, not investment advice. Yeah.
I don't give any investment advice or health advice, but I'm constantly doing it. So I'm not a expert. People, that's the nice thing about not having a expertise in anything. It's we're just sharing ideas. But yeah, this is the Wolfpack Gold subscription.
Oh, cool.
Oh, it is. Yeah, Wolf Cub. That's what it is. Yeah, and
I like the mark. I like the design on that. That's cool.
yeah, and it's he seems like a really cool guy. Had him on. He reached out, came on, realized that we had a bunch of mutual friends. So I'm like, he's got to be a decent guy. He works with a lot of people that I'm friends with and friendly with. And but yeah, I think that idea of investing in gold and things like that is a great idea. And again, like this goes back to what you were saying, Mark and Matt, about just not having, don't be exclusive to just one idea of like just Bitcoin, like be open to all these things. I mean, I remember Douglas Ruskoff, who wrote President Shock and a bunch of other great books. But when he was on my show, he talked about all the different things we used to use as currency, right? Where people used to trade all types of things, and sometimes people would just trade 1 hour of labor for 1 hour of labor, right? And because I would have some type of skill that was useful, and you'd have some, that type of thing, and we should be open to those type of things because that's how you make sure that you're not controlled, that you're not creating an industry or system that can be controlled and manipulated. And so, yeah, I think we should be open to that and not be so tribalistic.
I think that we need to do that to save humanity. I think that this whole centralization, top-down control mechanism is overrun by insane people who don't understand that they're going to kill us. That
Well, and
I know
they've
some of them want to, but I don't think they understand that they can't build that utopian society. It's not possible.
here's the thought is that part of what they're doing is not just keeping you from information. It's like what they're trying to do is stomp out the curiosity that I think the three of us all share, that we're interested in what's going to happen in this world. We're interested in alternative technologies for things like I've talked about it years ago. I talked about creating a content channel where you just explore these alternative energy things, right? And get some smart engineers on it and say, well, this isn't working and here's why, or wow, this really is working. And you actually have decent technical people looking at it you know, uh, instead of folks who are maybe more questionable, who can say, look, this guy has a master's in engineering and look what he was able to prove, um, just people need to be curious. And that's what's lacking. Curiosity is just being shut down along with all the rest of it. With the information is also the curiosity. It's like we're having the example of how to think taken away from us, the critical thought processes and all of that. Um,
Well, like
that
Matt,
might be obvious.
yeah, no, but it's a very important point. Like Matt talked about, it's the school system's a huge issue. You're just brainwashing kids, and to quote our dear friend James Corbett, he said it on my show years ago, and it's so true. I constantly repeat it. Schools are supposed to be a place where you teach kids how to think. Instead, we're teaching them what to think, and that's the problem with a lot of these things. Like you look at the Terrence Howard podcast he did with Rogan, and then he had that podcast he did with Weinstein. Like Eric Weinstein was just like so worried about what his community said and what like the PhDs thought and all these things. And it's like no, we should be open to crazy people who have crazy ideas and push the boundaries. And I remember when I had Dr. Jessica Rose on, and one of the times I had her on, and then she's a PhD, she's a mathematician, she's like just a super smart gal. And then I'm like, hey, would you be willing to come on with Dr. Tom Cowan, who kind of pushes the boundaries in regards to our understanding of viruses, our understanding of nature, water, if everything's conscious and whatnot. And she came on and she was like, yeah, that sounds really interesting. And I had them both on and I had a great roundtable discussion. But the problem is most people aren't willing to listen to people who are pushing back against the ideas that molded their worldview, and
Yeah.
that's something that I kept telling Dr. Jessica Rose. I'm like, this is the problem. Like, if I go to school for whatever expertise, whatever field I might be interested in, there's going to be some basic principles that I have to subscribe to. And then all my ideas, all my new ideas have to start on those principles, right? So it's like I use the example of like, I build a house, but I have to put the foundation in first, right? And then as a carpenter, I'm told like, hey, you can build this house any way you want, but you have to use our foundation. So I'm limited on, my imagination, my creativity, all these things, because I have to use that foundation. And what we need to do is say, hey, let's blow up the foundation and start all over and rethink everything, right? And I think that's the problem, is that a lot of these experts, they to once they, even if they do have new ideas, they don't realize like they're controlled, because all their new ideas or all their all the
Well,
flexibility they have in their imagination and thinking has to start in the same place, and they have to
let,
subscribe
let,
to something.
let me rephrase that a bit. I don't think it's so much that we need to blow up this foundation. I think we need to recognize that this isn't the only real estate, and that this foundation can stay here, but we're going to build this one over here. And we're going to see how our structure turns out. Is our structure turn out compatible, the same, better, worse? Yeah, we're just going to build over here. And another thing is, I think we need to do this as that sort of uh, exploration of the inner self. Because what I see in the alternative media is that when someone starts to get a little bit rude or opinionated or harsh, they tend to stop talking. And I think we need to have a bit thicker skin as well. And I could say that about all sides in various issues that we need to be able to, stand our ground when we need to stand our ground. And we need to be able to stop and listen when we need to stop and listen. And we should not let our feelings get in the way of that. Uh, we need a whole show on that, Ricky.
No, I completely agree. That's why I love doing the Union of the Unwanted. And Mark, if you're not familiar with the Union of the Unwanted, it's the other show I host with those guys behind me. We had a fan of the show paint a Union.
Nice.
I
Is that
looked
what that is?
a Backstreet Boy reject, and I think Sam and Mike pick up fast. But the thing is,
It's
like,
cool.
we need that. We need people who are willing to discuss ideas, push back on ideas, and not get so tribalistic and so upset. Like yesterday we did a Union of the Unwanted, and we hit on the topic of the Trump assassination or attempt. And again, we had so many different theories and whatnot. And we had people who were willing to go down the road of maybe Trump was in on a hoax, maybe he was, not a part of it, maybe it was planned, maybe it wasn't, but Miriam Hanine, who's a regular on that show, she was talking.
That's an unallowed opinion. That's
Well,
awesome.
thing. But it is funny how people only want to subscribe to conspiracy theories when they defend their worldview and their perspectives and their narratives, because it's like all of a sudden people on the left are all for this completely, over the top, kind of hard to believe conspiracy that Trump did it on purpose to try to, make himself a martyr. It's like, wait, I thought you guys were the anti-conspiracy theory group. Now you're like all for like a pretty crazy conspiracy theory because there's all these things, and in regards to security issues and all these things. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, Miriam Hanine said, she's like, I was just sparking the idea that it could have been maybe Trump was in on it. And she's like, I'm not saying I subscribe to it, but I'm just saying that, like, hey, let's discuss it. Like, is that a possibility? And she was saying people were getting upset. People were like, losing their mind that she was even sparking that conversation. And like you said, that shouldn't happen.
You think about the camera
Well-
view we see. I mean, they didn't even have to actually hit him, right? Somebody's shooting. They shoot some random shots into the crowd. They just make sure they don't hit him. He puts his hand up to his ear and ducks down. Anything could happen then, right? So it's physically possible from what we've seen in the footage, right? When he's
Right.
down low,
And
somebody
look at
could-
all the look at all the, and I wasn't there. I wasn't at that meeting, so I don't know exactly what happened. But think about it. A lot of misdirections going on. There's a lot of things that are just like, well, this shooter over here, and nobody's really looking into the past of this kid.
Well,
And
the phone,
that-
and
that-
you
the
can't.
school has denied a lot of the allegations about the kid. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ricky.
No, that's an important point too. You're right. I mean that's an important point. The fact that they said they couldn't get into the phone, which is like
which makes no sense whatsoever.
I mean
That's a lie.
that sounds like 9/11 when they said we couldn't find the black boxes, but we found the laminated passport of one of the hijackers. It's like, are you serious? Like how, like you expect people to believe this? And so there's just so many things that don't make sense. But I'm all for this idea of question everything and don't put, and when we say that, that means even question things that go against like our worldview or go against what we want to believe to be true, and I think that's where people are very skeptical when they're pointing the finger, to the other side, to the people that they don't like. But
Right.
very rarely will people, question narratives that, you saw it with the Hamas Israel debate, right? There's a lot of people that just became real tribalistic, right? Real quick. And I'm just like, wait. No, that's wrong. But can we admit that like that's kind of wrong too? Like there's not every issue is cut and dry in black and white. Most of the time they're not cut and dry in black and white.
Well, again, none of us are actually at these events. why shouldn't we kind of hold like, okay, I'm going to be looking at the options and I really don't have to pick a side right now because I'm still reviewing this. And you've heard me say this before, Ricky. I have three answers to truth: true, false, and I just don't know. And a lot of the more I learn, the more I have to say, I just don't know.
Well,
Let's weigh what the possible answers are.
I talked to Ryan Christian from the Last American Vagabond about this, and I'm always saying the same thing to him, like, and everybody in the community. I'm like, to me, it's always surprising how quickly people will pick a narrative and then go with it, right? And I'm like, these events just happened, and people are already saying like, this is what happened, or that's what happened, or and I'm like, I'm always one of those people that I never really jump to talking about a new event when it happens. You know, when the October 7th events happen, I'm like, I'm not going to really talk about it until I really get time to analyze and digest all the information. When the
Mhm.
Trump assassination attempt happened, I'm like, it looks like this, but could it be possible that it was a staged event? It's not out of the realm of possibility. Nothing is out of the realm of possibility. So I'm going to kind of, pump the brakes and like give myself time to like hear all the perspectives and opinions. And that's why I like listening to people that I disagree with, because I'm like, okay, maybe they're going to shine light on something that I haven't paid attention to, or I didn't notice, or I didn't research or whatnot. And but you're right, like too often people like to pretend they know, and those are usually the people that turn me off. I'm like, if you're talking like you're 100% certain about something that I know you can't be 100% certain about, then I'm skeptical about everything you're saying, right? Because it's like,
Right.
you know,
It is better if you've got someone that was there at the event that can actually speak like, yes, I was there. I saw that. I heard that. That's a different level, but you don't get that option very often.
without a doubt, without a doubt. So people go to their websites, guys. Send me links to anything you want me to put in a show description. Please send me the links. I'll make sure I put all those links in the show description. If you're a content creator, podcaster, streamer of any sort, or you're just a person who finds some of these technologies and projects interesting and you want to be involved or get more information, please reach out to these guys, Mark and Matt. And thank you guys so much for your time, for hitting on a topic that I easily would not be able to understand without you guys. And and hopefully this will help with getting the word out there and getting some attention on what I think is a very important topic, because no matter what topic you're into, if we can't make sure that the information is out there and reachable, then censorship is going to affect us all in the near future. So we have to make sure that we think long term, and like we were saying before, Rumble, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, like these platforms seem to be a safe place for now, but we know that in a matter of time it probably won't be, and they can just unplug us all whenever they want, and then next thing you know, we'll be scattering around looking for a new home. So let's look at alternatives. Let's help fund them. Let's help push these ideas. Let's help brainstorm the wisdom of crowds. Let's bring really interesting people together, and like Matt said, like let's look for projects and people who maybe have really interesting ideas that can help with these goals of anti-censorship. So thanks again, guys. Any last words?
Just want to thank you
I've
too,
said
Ricky. It
enough.
was awesome. It was awesome. Really enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity and for the wonderful, wonderful discussion. It was really cool.
Thanks, Mark. And I'll have to have you guys on a future Union of the Unwanted. Maybe we can do one on this specific topic and try to gather some people in the tech community. I know Ernest is always down to come on and talk IPFS. So maybe do a roundtable discussion on this and get some content creators. Maybe they'll ask some good questions. You guys will hopefully have some answers for them, and maybe spark some more interest in this. So I'll keep you guys in the loop for the next one, and we'll keep in touch. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate the time.
Bye bye.
Thanks.
See you guys.
Bye.